Alright, just waiting to log into the stream on my phone so I can keep an eye on chat in case anyone drops in, which occasionally does happen. Okay, there's the stream. Alright, so hello world, or I guess I should say good evening world at this point. My name is Miles, and I'm a graduate student at Michigan State University in the United States. And in my quest to become the world's biggest biology nerd, I guess you could call me, I like to try to learn the latest scientific discoveries by looking at the pretty pictures published in top scientific journals. The papers I look at, I've never seen before, or I've never read before, and anyone who joins the stream is welcome to drop any questions or comments or paper suggestions in the chat, and I'd be happy to take a look at those. If this is your first time seeing one of my videos, please take a moment to subscribe to my Twitch or YouTube channels at Miles Does Science. It's free, and you can always unsubscribe later if you want. Now, excuse me, should have cleared my throat before the show started. But as is customary now, on this little show that I have, or I guess I should say, I have an update to share. I've been working on the layout of my channel and such, trying to update figures and, or really I guess you could just say like the channel art. And recently I threw together this bad boy. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I changed the capture to this "Be Right Back" sign, and I'm trying to see if it actually pops up on stream. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so you guys can't see it. This right here, if you don't know what this is called a motif, and essentially what it is, it's a representation of a pattern in DNA. So DNA is built out of 4 different building blocks, and those 4 different building blocks are referred to as A, T, G, and C. And here we have numbered positions in a stretch of DNA. Here we have 8 different positions here. And these letters are basically showing the frequency at which different letters occur in this pattern. So in this pattern here, an A always occurs at position number 8, a G always occurs at position number 2, and an A and C always occur at positions 4 and 5. But these other positions are a little more fuzzy. Different letters can be in these positions based on the exact occurrence of the pattern. But anyway, I just thought that was a kind of a dorky thing to show off. It took me like 10 seconds to make. But anyway, let's get to the actual meat of what we came here for. Actually talk about some science. As is, I guess, customary on my show now, I like to highlight recent discoveries in the world of climate change research. And just by, so I skimmed the abstract here before I loaded up the stream, and it seems like essentially what this paper is about is how the need to feed a growing human population is often at odds with the need to reverse biodiversity loss on planet Earth. Biodiversity loss is a topic I've touched on a couple times. Excuse me. But essentially, biodiversity is just a fancy term to refer to the array of species found on Earth. And relatively recently, since humans came along, the Earth has been experiencing a mass extinction of sorts. species are going extinct left and right, largely due to human activities, especially how we convert land for uses like agriculture. And this paper, the authors, of which there are a lot, these are all the authors right here, a bunch of amazing scientists, no doubt. These guys, they constructed a bunch of computational models where tried to they tried to develop scenarios uh, where we could feed a growing human population and reverse biodiversity loss at the same time, avoiding um, some of the worst effects of climate change. Well, I guess I don't know if this um, I don't know if this paper is directly related to climate change. It's about a similar topic or a connected topic of biodiversity loss. So I guess I shouldn't say that the paper is all about climate change, but the loss of biodiversity is definitely a closely connected topic. Um, some of the same human behaviors that are causing biodiversity declines are also causing climate change. So I figured this would be appropriate to discuss. Um, so yeah, I guess we could try to drop into what they found. Seems like, let's see, try to find their main point here. So here the authors write that we can avoid 2/3 of future biodiversity losses and reverse biodiversity trends by the year 2050 if we intensify trade, reduce food waste, and switch to having more plant-based human diets, which are widely thought to be more sustainable than more animal foods heavy diets, simply because when there are in the production of animal products, there are more steps at which energy is lost. So when you acquire energy by eating food, that energy typically first comes from the sun, then it's captured. Some of that energy is captured by plants, a very small fraction of that energy, really. Most of it is lost to the environment and isn't absorbed by plants. And then, if you eat a piece of steak, perhaps, in order to get the energy from plants, a cow first has to eat the plants, and then there's additional energy losses there due to the inefficiencies in how cows digest plants. And then you eat the cow, whereas if you just ate the plants directly, you avoid those extra energy losses. So it's really just thermodynamics, I guess you could say. But yeah, it's one of the sticking points of how a lot of people think we have to reverse climate change. We have to switch to more plant-based diets. But I think this paper really highlights kind of one of the more frustrating aspects of of both climate change research and biodiversity loss research is that we already know the solution to the problem. Like, in order to reverse biodiversity losses, we know that we have to change how we eat and process food and how we trade, and we have to change where we get our energy from. We have to more intensively conserve biodiverse regions of the planet. But all of that, it just requires so much work that no one's willing to, or at least I guess the world as we have it right now isn't willing to do it. We're all just kind of, in my opinion, we're all just kind of, a bunch of lazy bums sitting on the couch waiting for while while the house around us is burning down. So yeah, those are my 2 cents. But enough of that. Let's try to actually look at some figures. I only look at 2 figures, so try to speed up the show. After we look at paper on something dire like this, I always try to at the end look at a cool paper or something that's really interesting and less heartbreaking. Excuse me. I don't know why my throat gets all scratchy all of a sudden. I really hope it's not the you know what. I hope it's not the corona. It's probably. Anyway, let's see. We have a bunch of time series, um, some year on the x-axis, some kind of indicator on the y-axis. No idea what that is. Okay, so we have 3 different line colors for 3 different scenarios, looks like. These solid black lines represent historical data. The gray lines represent some kind of baseline scenario, I think, which I believe just means like business as usual. What will happen if we don't change how we are using land and producing food? And then the yellow line refers to the IAP scenario, which I think refers to a kind of climate intervention. IAP, that sounds familiar. Might have something to do with the Paris Climate Accord, something like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, we essentially have just like lots of indicators. These are just labeled as indicator values. These y-axes are pretty vague. So let's try to figure out what's going on here. 5 aspects of biodiversity. BDI values. It's not clear what any of these mean yet. Okay, so let's just start with panel A here. Try to get through at least one panel. So the caption for panel A says the extent of suitable habitat metric estimates from AIMB or insights. Okay, so this is some measure of suitable habitat, whatever that means. Perhaps that's like habitat for that can support natural biodiversity or something. I'm not sure. These are all computational models, by the way. And so here we see that in the baseline scenario, the extent of suitable habitat decreases, I think, whereas in the mitigation scenario, it increases. I have no idea what this scale refers to, so I don't know if this difference here is very significant or not. Although in this scenario over here, the difference looks much more significant between these two different lines, which I think are okay. And so they have these different estimates of suitable habitat right here, which they have just a bunch of long acronyms for. Could refer to various organizations or something like that. So what the gist here is that if we don't do anything, things get bad. If we do something, things get better. So All right, we'll look at the second figure real quick, and then we'll move on to a cool paper about Vikings that I saw. And we have a bunch more scenarios here. Oh, these pretty lines. So the shaded regions around the line probably refer to some kind of confidence interval, some way to represent uncertainty in the predictions. So yeah, we have these indicator values again over time. Looks like, let's see here. So this caption says that future actions towards reversing biodiversity trends vary across 7 different scenarios. These 7 scenarios, they give a bunch of acronyms. They have their baseline scenario, and then I guess different kinds of interventions that aren't defined, at least not in the caption right here. Oh wait, here. Oh wait, no, that's not really definition. I don't know what SS versus DS scenarios are. Let's see. So I guess these different scenarios represent, it's like incremental improvements. If we do a little bit, then things get a little bit better. But if we do more things, then things get even better. I think that's essentially what's being shown down here. Date of peak loss. I'm not sure what, I assume that's loss of biodiversity. If we, business as usual, the date of peak loss is really late in the century, towards like the year 2080, 2090. Whereas if we go full force and do our best to mitigate climate change, then, or biodiversity loss, I should say, then the peak loss date will only occur in 2025, which I guess that's kind of what this plot's showing up here. Like this yellow line dips sooner than this line down here. Which is kind of good. I mean, it probably doesn't sound good to have the date of peak loss closer to the present, but I assume if the date of peak loss is closer to now, then the amount of loss at that peak will be lower. I think that's the assumption. And then here they're talking about how much damage we can avoid if we implement these different strategies. So obviously in the baseline scenario, business as usual, we're going to face the full impacts of biodiversity loss, but then with these different changes, we can get incremental improvements and actually get close to like 100% of avoided damage, which is really surprising. That's more it's a very, I want to say, optimistic perspective. One of the things that I also think is most frustrating about biodiversity loss research and climate change research is that we already, or at least I oftentimes think like we are already doomed. Like we've already screwed up this planet so much, we're just, waiting for a you-know-what to hit the fan. But it's pretty hopeful that we can actually do quite a bit to reverse what's going on right now. But the sooner we act, the better, of course. And then here we have different ways of ratio of change. So I think what this is just showing is that we implementing these biodiversity loss mitigation strategies um, will decrease the rate at which biodiversity is being lost relative to the baseline scenario. Okay, I'm not sure what these various I'm not sure what these various efforts are, as they call them, like SS versus DS versus C. I don't really define that in the caption, which is surprising. Let's see if we can just look at it real quick. Or if they have like a list anywhere. Ah, here we go, a table. Come on, table. Okay, so, all right, so across the top here we have different efforts that can be taken to reverse biodiversity loss. And then we have our different scenarios right here. Baseline scenario or business as usual if we don't implement any of these. The SS scenario, which stands for supply side. Okay, that makes sense. The effects of the SS scenario, we have to both sustainably increase crop yields and increase trade of agricultural goods. To get the DS scenario, we have to reduce waste from agricultural goods and have more plant-based diets. I wonder how far along the spectrum to plant-based diets the authors modeled. And then C stands for conservation. So to get the C scenario, we have to increase the extent of protected areas and increase restoration. And they have these different combined scenarios right here. The IAP, I don't know what IAP stands for, but the IAP scenario is implementing all of these efforts. Yeah, this is what we need to do to reverse these terrible trends. Really, if you just add like producing sustainable energy, then really we could turn Earth into a paradise, probably, for all, at least in theory. All right, move on to something. This is pretty optimistic and gives me some hope. But let's move on to something a little different. Take our minds off the impending doom that is climate change. I keep saying climate change, but the paper was about biodiversity and which are closely connected. But yeah, so I've never heard of anyone sequencing Viking genomes before, but I guess it has been done. These guys, bunch of authors again, even more than the previous paper. It's a ton of scientists. These guys sequenced the genomes of 442 humans from archaeological sites across Europe and Greenland. Presumably, these were individuals from Viking culture, and they studied how genes flow throughout the Viking period between populations, genetic structure, diversity of the populations, genetic diversity, I mean. There are different kinds of diversity. And yeah, let's see what their main findings are. DNA analysis. So they found that Viking expeditions included close family members, and that pigmentation associated loci, or loci are just positions on a chromosome of DNA. These pigmentation genes are very different between populations of Vikings, which is pretty cool. I don't know very much about Vikings at all, or Viking culture, besides, you know, what I've learned from video games, which I'm sure is not very accurate, but it's be a good opportunity to learn a little bit more about Vikings. So this looks like just the location of different Viking populations or different individual Viking um, Viking individuals that were sequenced. Broad category of sites. So they divided up their samples by different time periods, which seem rather arbitrary, but that's how they did it. At the Iron Age, the early Viking Age, the Viking Age, medieval and early modern age, which is ending around the year 1600. Huh, that's surprising. I didn't know that Vikings were still around in the 1600s. Although, I guess I should say that I should um, clarify that I know almost nothing about Vikings, so I probably shouldn't be making assumptions about an entire culture like that. And then they have a bunch of other ages. So the samples are pretty well distributed across Europe, is essentially all it's saying. Let's look at the next figure. I don't know if I'll look at all of them, just because coming up on like 30 minutes. And I try to keep these videos under 30 minutes. I didn't stream yesterday at all, like I said I would. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, because I was kind of, I don't know, lazy yesterday, I guess you could say. And I just didn't do it. Also, I've been wanting to experiment with different different times and different days for when to stream, just to see and potentially get more viewers. Right now, I'm gonna try streaming in the evenings um, instead of around noon. So here, oh, 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 it's pretty late where I am right now. So, but first, before I go to sleep, I must figure out what's going on here. Genetic structure of these Viking samples. Oh yeah, so we have all these different Viking individuals again. So many colors and so many different colors and shapes of points. I don't think I've ever seen a scatter plot with this many different colors and shapes of points. This has got to be some kind of record right here. This is just crazy. I mean, it's legitimate, and I think it works. But it's just I've never seen so many different shapes and colors of points on a single graph. So it looks like we have two different axes of genetic variation here, and each individual falls in a different position on those axes depending on the exact sequences in their genome. And similar individuals will cluster together points, and more different individuals, genetically speaking, will be further away from one another. Is just what I think is happening here. And here they have like a group of points representing farmers, groups of hunter-gatherers, and so on. Different types of farmers over here. UMAP and MDS, I think those are different ways of clustering data. Okay, yeah, so MDS is multidimensional scaling. And, oh man, they had 1,300 ancient genomes? I thought they only sequenced like 400. Now they're like 1,300 in this figure? Jeez. Good grief. Genomics is so high throughput now. It's really crazy how rapid genomics has advanced, even since, you know, the last 5 years or 10 years. I have curiosity. I'm wondering what technologies they use to do their sequencing. It's just, my own my own curiosity here. And they used aluminum, but did they use any long read technologies? Not. Probably weren't aiming to get complete assemblies. Just because, they had 13 or like 1,000 genomes. you know, Assembling just one complete genome is a lot of work. Couldn't imagine doing that 1,300 times. Could probably do a few of them in the span of like a PhD, I think. But I don't know if I could do 1,300. That still seems like a lot. Process, sand tools, aluminum. I didn't use any long read technology, but still very impressive. More genetic structure and maps. Let's just go to another. Okay, just another map. This time the heat map. Oh man, let's look at. I don't often look at the extended data figures, but this one looks interesting. Picture of an archaeological site. We'll look at this picture and then we'll call it a night. If it ever loads, that is. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Oh my god. Jeez. Is this some kind of mass grave? Let's see here. Some kind of burial site in A. B is a mass grave. Why there's a mass grave? How'd they die? 50 young adult males. Man. And this grave right here, jeez. That's beautiful. Beautiful European countryside right there. And then here we have some kind of tomb. See here, D. Oh, church foundation graves. Christian cemetery. 182 centimeter long male. That seems really tall. Is that tall? Let's do a quick conversion here. Centimeters to feet. I'm not very, even though I've been working with the metric system for a long time as a scientist, I still don't really have an intuitive feel for it. Under 182 centimeter feet. Let's see if my browser will do it. I'm 5'9". That wasn't as tall as I was thinking. About 6 feet taller than me, definitely. Anyway, interesting. Well, um, uh, didn't didn't walk away with too much about Vikings yet, but it seems like a really cool paper. So I think I'm gonna take a look at it again later, try to figure out what was going on. But pretty cool. They went out lots of different patterns and a diversity of Viking populations. It looks like there's some obvious structure to these populations, which is really interesting. Obviously, different clusters of individuals. Very cool. It's very press subscribe as well. If you made it this far, made it to the end of the video, please feel free to again subscribe to my Twitch or YouTube channels at Miles Does Science, and have a great rest of your day. I'm gonna go to bed. I'm exhausted. Good night, everyone.